At this point, I want to take a look at something called cross-site request forgery. Cross-site request forgery is actually where you get somebody to perform an action that they're not expecting to perform because you are bringing them to a page that is going to reference something where they have some credentials. So here's an example. I've got a page here that I'm creating, and I'm going to add an image tag to this page. And instead of an image, I'm actually going to do something else. So I'm going to call a script, and I'm going to make this really obvious here, just so it's very clear what's going on. But this is how a cross-site request forgery would work. So I've got an image tag, and what an image tag does is it tells the browser, here's an image, go get that image. So what happens here is the browser is going to go to this URL, not realizing, of course, that it's not an image file. It's just a script, because all it's going to do is it's going to issue a GET request against this URL. And in this case, it's a bank, and I'm saying transfer from this account number to this account number. Now, this is pretty obvious, but this is an example of something you could do with cross-site request forgery. So if somebody has their browser open and they've logged into their bank, for example, recently, so they've got a session open with them. Now, if I were to send them this page and say, here, go take a look at this page, they would bring the page up, and the browser would automatically perform this function because, of course, the session credentials are already in place because that person is already logged into their bank and the cookies are all there and the session credentials are there, and this would just automatically happen in the background without the user even knowing that's what's there. In fact, the only thing they would see would be a broken image tag potentially on the page. So this is how cross-site request forgery works, is I have a user go to one site, in this case, the one that I'm creating here, and it actually refers to something going on a different site altogether. And that's how you actually get functions performed using the credentials of some other user. And you could do things like this bank transfer, for example, or buying things at Amazon as another example. So there's lots of different things you could do with cross-site request forgery, and at its very basic level, this is just how it works. You create a web page and put an image tag in here and point to the script that you want the user to run. Now, worst case scenario here is that it's going to call this script and maybe it will actually have the user log in. Often people don't pay attention, they don't recognize that there's a login going on that they didn't really expect. They're so used to seeing things like that, they may just log in without even realizing where they're logging into or why they're logging in there. And it may actually authenticate them, perform this function, and then just move on. So cross-site request forgery has a lot of potential, assuming that the web server in question here isn't doing something like making sure that this is a post rather than a GET request. That's one way of fixing this particular problem.